An American billionaire heiress shocked high society by becoming a nun and giving away her fortune to build schools for the most forgotten people in America. One of the richest women in American history became a nun so she could build schools for the people America pushed to the margins. Today, March 3rd, the church remembers St. Katharine Drexel, a Philadelphia heiress who spent her fortune for Native Americans and African Americans. She was born Katharine Mary Drexel on November 26, 1858, in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Her father was Francis Anthony Drexel, a prominent banker and philanthropist in the growing industrial city. Her mother, Hannah Langstroth, died only weeks after Katharine's birth, leaving a quiet wound in the household. Katharine grew up with her older sister, Elizabeth, and later a younger sister, Louise, after her father remarried Emma Bouvier. In the Drexel home, wealth was treated like a loan from God, and charity was treated like an obligation. Family traditions included prayer, mass, and practical acts of giving that brought the poor to their doorstep. As a young woman, she also saw another kind of poverty, the spiritual emptiness that can hide behind comfort. In the 1870s and 1880s, she lived the expected life of a Catholic socialite, moving in elite circles of Philadelphia society. Yet serious illness and death in her family kept pressing one question onto her conscience. When her stepmother Emma became ill, Katharine helped nurse her through the final years and watched money fail to stop suffering. Those experiences sharpened her sense that a meaningful life could not be built on privilege alone. A decisive turning point came when the Drexels traveled to the western United States and visited Native American communities. There, Katharine saw poverty, displacement, and the lack of schools and pastoral care on and near reservations. She did not treat what she saw as a political slogan, but as a Christian duty with a deadline. Instead of making a single donation and walking away, she began supporting missions and missionaries over the long term. By the late 1880s, she was funding teachers, supplies, and church work aimed at communities the mainstream ignored. In 1887, she helped establish St. Catharine's Indian School in Santa Fe, New Mexico, an early concrete sign of her commitment. That same year, in Rome, she and her sisters were granted an audience with Pope Leo XIII. Katharine asked the Pope to send more missionaries to serve the Native American missions she was helping to finance. The Pope's reply cut through her plans with a challenge that became famous because he suggested that she become a missionary herself. Katharine did not treat that moment as a dramatic story to repeat, but as a call to make a permanent choice. She spoke at length with her spiritual director, Bishop James O'Connor, who guided her discernment. O'Connor had served as a pastor connected to the Drexel family and later became a bishop with responsibility for a vast Western territory. Katharine began to see that funding work from a distance was not the fullest answer to what she had been shown. So she took a step that surprised American high society and alarmed some of her own peers. In 1889, she entered religious life as a novice with the Sisters of Mercy in Pittsburgh, leaving her status behind. She was not escaping responsibility because she carried an even heavier responsibility into the convent. She intended to dedicate her inheritance, her energy, and her entire life to mission work in the United States. On February 12, 1891, she professed religious vows and founded a new congregation for this purpose. The community became known as the Sisters of the Blessed Sacrament, dedicated to serving Native Americans and colored people in the language of the era. Katharine, now called Mother Katharine, placed the Eucharist at the center of the new foundation's spirituality and daily rhythm. She believed that adoration and action belong together because worship should form courage, not replace it. Her sisters opened and staffed schools, catechetical programs, and missions in places where Catholics were few and prejudice was strong. During her lifetime, the congregation opened and supported nearly 60 schools and missions, especially in the West and the South. This was not charity as a hobby, but institution building, with budgets, buildings, teachers, and long-term plans. Mother Katharine learned quickly that racism was not only personal, but structural, enforced by custom and sometimes by law. She saw African Americans denied quality education and treated as disposable labor in an economy that called itself free. She also saw Native American families pressured to abandon identity while being denied the resources needed to survive. Rather than accept this as normal, she and her sisters built alternatives, often facing resistance from local power. In some regions, opening a school for Black students drew threats, boycotts, and hostility that tested the sisters' resolve. Katharine responded with a mixture of quiet discipline and hard practicality, pushing forward without seeking attention. She insisted on strong academic standards because she wanted her students prepared to lead, not merely to be managed. She also supported religious education, visiting homes, and works of mercy in hospitals and prisons, tying faith to daily life. Her most famous educational legacy grew in New Orleans, Louisiana, a city marked by deep racial divisions and complex Catholic history. In 1915, her foundation began an educational work there that would develop into Xavier University of Louisiana. The institution grew, and in 1925, Xavier University of Louisiana was established as a Catholic university, serving a predominantly African-American student body. It became, and remains, a singular institution in American Catholic higher education. For Katharine, the point was not prestige, but the formation of Catholic professionals, teachers, and leaders in communities shut out of opportunity. She did all of this while practicing personal austerity, living simply despite having access to enormous wealth. Her fortune did not disappear by accident because she deliberately gave it away to build schools, missions, and stable religious works. At the same time, she demanded accountability because she understood that wasted money wastes lives. As the years passed, the work expanded, and the burdens of administration grew heavier on her shoulders. In 1935, she suffered a heart attack, a warning that her body was not as resilient as her will. In 1937, she stepped down from leadership as Superior General, no longer able to carry the pace she had set. Not long after, a stroke left her largely immobile, and the active founder was forced into a hidden life. For the last 18 years of her life, she lived in a state of near-complete immobility, unable to travel the mission field she had mapped. She embraced that limitation as a new form of service, turning her days into sustained Eucharistic adoration and prayer. The woman who had once moved money, people, and buildings across the country now fought in silence, from a chair and then from a bed. On March 3, 1955, she died at her congregation's mother house in the Pennsylvania area near Philadelphia. She was 96 years old, and her life spanned the Civil War era's aftermath, Jim Crow, and the early stirrings of modern civil rights. After her death, the church began to examine her life with the slow caution that surrounds sainthood. Her cause was formally introduced in Rome in the 1960s, and her reputation for heroic virtue continued to grow. On January 26, 1987, Pope John Paul II declared her venerable, recognizing the holiness of her life. For beatification, the Church also required a miracle attributed to her intercession after death. A healing from 1904 involving a teenage boy named Robert Gutherman was investigated and accepted as miraculous. The Vatican concluded that the family had prayed solely through Mother Katharine's intercession and that the healing could not be explained medically. On November 20, 1988, Pope John Paul II beatified her, presenting her as an example for the faithful. For canonization, a second miracle was examined with the same scrutiny. In 1994, a young child named Amy Wall was healed of congenital deafness, a cure attributed to prayers asking Mother Catherine's help. After medical and theological review, that healing was recognized as the miracle that opened the door to canonization. On October 1st, 2000, in St. Peter's Square in Vatican City, Pope John Paul II canonized her as Saint Katharine Drexel. The Church's official memory of her does not focus on a single spectacular event, but on a lifetime of sustained, organized love. She is often invoked as a patron for racial justice and for philanthropists because she joined money to mission and conscience to action. Her story also exposes a demanding truth that charity can become a form of discipline rather than a burst of emotion. She understood that education is not a luxury, but a weapon against humiliation, ignorance, and dependence. She also understood that the Eucharist is not an escape from the world, but the source of strength to face it. If you want to understand her spirituality, look at the pairings she refused to separate: adoration before the altar, and construction of schools outside the door. If you want to understand her courage, notice that she worked within a society that often punished anyone who challenged racial hierarchy. If you want to understand her legacy, look at the institutions that remained when her money was gone and the people those institutions formed. On this March 3rd, Saint Katharine Drexel stands as a reminder that holiness can be practical, expensive, and publicly contested. And she leaves a simple question behind, the same question Pope Leo XIII threw back at her in Rome. If you see the need, what about you?